Hey everybody, welcome back to Salvaged by Sammy. In last week's video, I showed you guys how to lighten wood furniture by using a tan wash, and that's what we're gonna do today to this entire piece. This mid-century modern hutch is beautiful, but we're gonna modernize it a little bit, lighten the wood, and just bring it back to life. Before we get started, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and let me know in the comments what you think of this furniture flip once we're finished. I'm going to start by removing all of the doors, top and bottom. That way it makes it easier to clean the individual pieces, strip them down, and sand them. Now we're gonna take Crud Cutter, which is my favorite degreaser, and wipe down the entire piece. Even though we're gonna strip down the original finish, I wanna go over it with Crud Cutter. That way when I apply the stripper, it actually adheres better and works better and isn't just collecting on top of a bunch of grime and dust. I'm now going to strip down the old varnish and stain. I like to strip instead of going straight into sanding because this is veneer, so I don't want to accidentally sand through the veneer. You can get this at any of your local home improvement stores. I like to brush it on and then wait about 30 minutes prior to scraping it off. When scraping it off, I found it easiest to use a metal container. Don't use plastic because it will eat right through the plastic. And then I take this metal container to my local dump where they dispose of hazardous waste. Once I've scraped all of the old varnish off, I'll use an afterwash by the same brand, Clean Strip. This is basically straight acetone and it's gonna remove all of the gunk and grime left over from the stripper. After using the afterwash, I like to let all of the pieces dry out overnight, and then I come in with 150 grit sandpaper to remove all of the leftover stain. After I sanded the entire piece down with 150 grit sandpaper, I then went through, sanded it all down with 200 grit sandpaper. So now it's time to move on to actually doing a paint wash on the piece. A paint wash is similar to when you see farmhouse style and it's like a whitewash. This is just a more affordable option because you can use paint that you already have. And if you're not the biggest fan on farmhouse style, like I'm not, then I like to use a tan, which keeps the piece a lot more natural looking. I've also seen people do green washes to kind of balance out red undertones. I've seen black washes. You can obviously do white washes. So the possibilities with this are really endless, and it's great because it's so affordable. And you only need 4 things: cloth or something, paper towels, anything to wipe down your piece with after you do the paint wash on it. A paintbrush, I like to just use a chip brush because you're putting it on super watery anyway, so it doesn't matter if there's brush strokes, and then I can just throw this away after. Some paint. My favorite paint to use is Algonquin. I can't pronounce it, but this one, and I will link it above as well, or Cathedral Top by Fusion Mineral Paint, and a little bit of water. And what's really neat about these paint washes is that you can go over it as many times as you need. It's quick, it's easy. So if you want something to be a little more concentrated, you can add more paint than water. I typically start out with about a 30-70 ratio, 30% paint, 70% water. And then as I go, I can either add more coats if I need, or I can just add a little bit more paint if it's a little too watery. I'd rather it be more watery than concentrated because you can always add more layers if you need, but it's a little bit harder to let it dry out and sand it all down. Your towel will start to get a lot of paint buildup on it, so that's why it's always great to have a few extra towels laying around. Now that we have the entire piece tan washed, I'm moving on to adding a top coat. Even when some paints say there's a built-in top coat, I always like to add one, especially if I'm selling a piece. That way it prevents it from dents and scratches over the next years. There are so many different top coat options out on the market. My favorite is Varathane's water-based polyurethane, and I like to use it in the finished satin, so it gives a little bit of shine but not too much. Water-based top coats are great because they're not going to yellow over time, so you can use them on light colors, dark colors. I especially like to use it on raw wood because it really keeps that natural color and doesn't change it too much. This top coat is also my favorite because it sprays, rolls, and brushes on beautifully, and it really doesn't have a lot of brush strokes, which is great for beginners. So now I am putting the doors back together, and my biggest piece of advice if you have a piece that has a lot of doors or just kind of moving parts in general is to separate them by baggies. I usually label them as well. I didn't this time, but yeah, it's a lifesaver and it will keep you so much more organized when you're going to put this all back together, because a lot of the screws just look the same and you don't want to just sit here and guess everything for hours. As you can see on this glass door, I got a lot of paint wash all over the glass because I only taped off the very inside edges. So my favorite way to remove that is to take one of these small razor blade scrapers, put a new blade in it, and then it just scrapes right off. Here's a quick reminder of what this mid-century modern hutch used to look like, and here is it now. Let me know your thoughts in the comments on this final result, and if you liked this makeover, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next week with another furniture flip.